Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, and welcome to this power-packed 60-minute session on Gen AI in risk and compliance. As everybody knows, AI is here to stay. Every day we have businesses finding more activities that can be optimized thanks to the efficiencies and effectiveness of AI. Within marketing and customer service, your risk management, your security, your compliance, you always have been using, or the companies have been using the information management and AI and advanced tools and techniques for optimizing, managing, and making sure that they stay in this highly competitive environment, right? The question here is, the main question here is AI or Gen AI a game changer in risk or compliance management? That's a moot question that's going to be asked. And we will come back to this question multiple times, in this particular topic. It's more accurate to say that, with the passage of time, AI is becoming a game changer. But there's still a long way to go. There are still companies who are coming up with tools and techniques for changing the landscape using the AI. We will talk about it. We will talk about what is AI. We'll talk about how AI is being used by us. What is the difference between AI, ML, Gen AI? What is deep learning, right? How are different vendors using deep learning? Yeah. So what are the different tools which are available for us? Then I will also take you through the risk and management world wherein Gen AI is being currently used. So there is a limitation of 1 hour in this course, so I'll not be able to cover much. But I'm going to give you a bird's eye view on what's happening in this industry. I'm going to give you practical examples on different banking companies and fintech companies who are using AI or Gen AI for their solutions. And we'll also talk about, is AI the solution for everything? It may not be, right? So what is the limitations of AI? There are certain limitations of AI as we see it. So what are those limitations and what are safeguards that need to be taken when you're using AI or Gen AI? Then we will be able to wrap up and take up questions. Okay, so without much ado, let's quickly go to this. So as we have been talking about that AI has been changing the lives, right? So it's been everywhere has been changing lives. So what's been changed by AI? How are we using AI now? AI is being used by a lot of us, knowing or unknowingly. We are using Google, we are using Bing, we are using a lot of search engines to search the internet. We do log into different websites. We do payments. We use credit cards. We use debit cards for the payments. And whenever we go to different websites, right? I'm just giving an example of Amazon or Netflix. Right? You go to websites, you always get curated content specifically created for you. So these contents can be in the form of curated content or recommended content for you, depending upon your watching, whatever that you've been watching from last couple of days or couple of weeks, right? Is this a AI? Yes, it's a form of AI. This means a number and variety of AI products and offerings is blossoming because of the demand. And right now, building and maintaining AI is very complex and expensive. As I was saying, that is Gen AI a game changer? Yes, it is. In a way, Gen AI is making companies to build inexpensive but highly valuable AI applications. So there are a lot of companies which are coming in. We'll talk about it. There are a lot of companies which are coming in and building a lot of AI solutions on top of the existing genai tools or LLMs. And these are inexpensive solutions, but these are highly useful or valuable solutions as well. But all this talks about, have you ever used GenAI? Like we have been, uh, bombarded with this particular term called as GenAI. So if I ask someone that, have you ever used GenAI? One of the few examples of so-called GenAI, we'll talk about what is GenAI and what is LLM, language models which are used in GenAI. So we'll see some examples. People have heard of ChatGPT. People would have heard of Bard from Google. And there is something called as Copilot, launched by Microsoft. Initially, it was called as uh, Bing Chat. Now they made it as Copilot now. So these are some of the examples that some of the guys might be using with respect to GenAI. So when we go to these examples, let's come to the topic of, main mood topic of, what is this AI, right? So let's come back to the basics, right? So what is this AI? Is it same as ML? Is it different to ML? What is Gen AI in between? What is this deep learning, right? So all this, begs, some answers, right? So if at all we talk about all these things, I've been, whenever we discuss in any seminar or any topic, two very common questions get asked, right? What is AI and what is the difference between AI and ML, right? One way to think about AI is a discipline. Like for example, physics, right? AI is a branch of computer science that deals with creation of intelligent agent, which are systems that can reason, learn, and act autonomously. Essentially, AI has to do with theory, methods to build machines that think and act like humans, right? So in this discipline, we also have ML. It's a bigger discipline. You also have ML, right? So which is a subfield of AI, right? So, but what is this ML? In AI, you always train a model from input data. You have input data, you put in some input data, you keep on putting large amount of input data, you will train a model, right? Once you train a model, what do you expect out of it? That model will make some useful prediction, right? So when you train a model and that model will make some useful predictions based on new or never before seen data drawn from the existing training data. So you have a training data. Based on that, you get a new or a never seen data. This is called as machine learning. Machine learning gives the computer the ability to learn without explicit programming. So we'll not yet talk about Gen AI. So we'll talk about multiple things and maybe quickly come back to a short definition of Gen AI and maybe a detailed definition of Gen AI as well. Yeah. So let's quickly go to the ML because ML is very important before we dive into Gen AI. So when we go to ML classes, right, I'm going to make it very simple. So I'm not going to complicate it too much. So I'm going to make it very simple. So I'm going to give you very, very simple definition of things, right? So two of the most simple classes in ML is called as supervised ML model and unsupervised ML model, right? The key difference between two is that in supervised models, we have labels. A label can be a number, a label can be a tag, a label can be some keyword, right? It can be a name of people, name of objects, name of animals, and all that. Usually, unlabeled data does not come with any tag. It can be unstructured data or it can be random data, which do not or does not have any tag. Right? Let me start giving you some examples out of it, right? So that maybe you will be able to see it more clearly, right? For example, I'll just give you one example. There are multiple examples which will be coming on later as well. For example, let's say that you are owner of a restaurant and there's historical data of bill amount, whatever is let's say $100 or $200 bill amount, and how much from different people, and based on different order types, this is the order type, they ordered whatever they ordered, there's a bill amount. And based on that, what was the tip amount which was given by those folks? Yeah. In supervised learning, right, the model learns from the past examples, right? It talks about, the past examples and what was the order size, how many people had come in at what time of the day, and what was the tip amount, what is the order and all that, right? So then the model uses a total bill amount to predict the future tip amount, right? When the order is picked up or delivered. So this is the future bill amount. Based on that, this is the tip amount that you will be getting. So this is an example of a supervised data. So where you have labels, right? Regarding unsupervised learning, we only want to look at that. Let's take an example of employees working in an organization in terms of tenurity or income. You have a group of employees, and you don't have any labels with respect to any names or any income labels, right? So this is an example of a problem of unsupervised model trying to solve. Unsupervised problems are all about discovery or looking into raw data and trying to see if it naturally falls into any groups, right? Where you're trying to figure out these are the different income levels, these are different group of employees working in an organization. Are they into fast track? Are they slow learners, slow performers, right? So we are trying to come up with some kind of a solution wherein we're trying to see if this falls into any groups and make some kind of predictive analysis. Yeah. So this becomes a part of your unsupervised learning. Going on to the next slide, if I can explain a bit more on supervised learning, it's a very important concept. There's a very small equation that I'm using. This again a lot of my examples I've been taking on Google Cloud. So because I've been working on Google Cloud for a long time for AI and ML. So this is one of my favorite examples. I've been taking it from Google Cloud. In supervised learning, the testing data values or X are input into the model. The model outputs certain predictions and compares the prediction to the training data used to train the model. You have a training data, you have a prediction, right? This has been compared. If the predicted data values and actual training data values are falling apart, we also use a term called hallucination. Later on, I'll be explaining more about it. It's called an error. The model tries to reduce this error until the predicted and actual values are closer together. We need to make sure that they're closer together. This is called as optimization problem. So we need to make sure that your supervised learning is more of an optimization problem, right, that we're trying to resolve. Yeah, a small insight just to make sure that you understand what is supervised learning. So coming back to the thought process of deep learning, right? So now that we have explored difference between your AI, ML, then in ML you have supervised and unsupervised learning. Then we can also briefly understand what is deep learning and how does it fit into all the scheme of things. While the ML is a broad field that encompasses many different techniques, deep learning is a type of ML. It's again a type of machine learning that uses neural networks, artificial neural networks, right? Allowing them to process more complex patterns than machine learning. So I'm introducing a new term called as artificial neural networks. So please bear with me, I'll try to simplify it a bit. Artificial neural networks are inspired by human brain, right? They're made up of multiple interconnected nodes or neurons that can learn to perform tasks by processing data and by making predictions, right? Deep learning models typically have multiple layers of such neurons, which allows the deep learning platforms and solutions to do more do more complex pattern matching than traditional learning systems. And these neural networks, right, they can use both labeled as well as unlabeled data. If you remember the discussion that we had before about labeled and unlabeled, I give an example as well. Now, this kind of a learning is called as semi-supervised learning. We talked about supervised learning, unsupervised learning before in the context of ML. Now we are talking about something called as semi-supervised learning in the context of your deep learning. Yeah. In semi-supervised learning, a neural network is trained on a small amount of labeled and a large amount of unlabeled data. Very, very small amount of structured, right? It can be, it can be few employees getting some kind of payroll management systems, a lot of unstructured data for the employees, right? The photos of employees, employees, hobbies. Based on that, you will come up with some kind of a some kind of a prediction which will help the organization to map the employees to maybe a different skill level, right? This labeled data helps neural network to learn the basic concepts of the task, while unlabeled data helps the neural network to generalize the new examples. You have unlabeled data should help you to generalize the new examples. The labeled data will help to concretize the basic task. So having said that, so now let's come up to the first simple definition of GenAI, right? So we've been talking about GenAI for some time, but we are not still defined it. So if at all we need to define it, what is GenAI? Now you can see here, GenAI is a part of deep learning. Can you see that, folks, here? Now, GenAI is a subset of deep learning, which means that it uses artificial neural networks because your deep learning uses artificial neural networks, right? So it can process, your GenAI can process what? Labeled and unlabeled data using supervised, unsupervised, and semi-supervised methods. Right? So this is what your simplest definition of GenAI is going to be. Going forward, we would be requiring to know what is LLM or large language models, because we will be using large language models for a lot of applications. It can be in terms of fraud detection, it can be in terms of doing your KYC or banking transactions, credit card transactions, in terms of risk management. So you will be using LLMs for a lot of things. So let's see what is the LLM or large language model is, right? LLM or large language model is a subset of deep learning. Deep learning models or machine learning models in general can be divided into two types, discriminative and generative. Yeah. Discriminative model is a type of model that's used to classify or predict labels for data points. Discriminative models are typically trained on a data set of labeled data points. They learn the relationship between features of data points and labels. Once a discriminative model is trained, it can be used to predict the label for new data points, right? So the next is, you have generative. A generative model generates data instances based on learned probability distribution of existing data, right? This generative models always generate new content. Always remember this, folks, right? This is where we're talking to about GenAI, and this is where we're heading towards GenAI as well. Yeah, generating new content. So let me give you some examples of discriminative technique and generative technique. So it's a simple example here. A discriminative model learns the conditional probability distribution or the probability of Y. This is a Y for output. The Y is an output for the input, this whatever the input, there's an input called there's a dog, and there's an input called there's a dog. We have given a picture of a dog or a text of a dog, text saying it's a dog or a dog, right? Then a discriminative model will always classify whether it's a dog or a cat or some other animal or not, right? So it's going to, you give a picture of a dog, it'll classify whether it's a dog, whether it's a cat, whether it's some other animal, and it'll give you that example saying this is a picture of a dog. But whereas a generative model learns the joint probability or the probability of X and Y, both X and Y, and predicts the conditional probability that, it's high probability that it's going to be a dog, and it generates a newer image of a dog, right? You give a image of a dog, it says this probability of this is going to be a dog, then it generates a newer image of dog, which is the newer image that is generated by this one is not existing in your repository. It's going to be a new image right now. Yeah. So to summarize, generative models can generate new data instances, while discriminative models can discriminate between different kinds of data instances. You have different kinds of data instances where you're discriminating it, different labeled ones, you're discriminating it. But in generative technique, you're generating new information based on the existing trained or sample information. All right. So wherever you encounter a lot of things, right, in your daily life, how do you know whether it's something is a Gen AI or not? You have a lot of things. You have AI, you have deep learning, you have ML, and you have a lot of different language models, LLMs. Whether it's Gen AI or not, how do you know that, right? So I just put in a few, stuff which will help you. A good way to distinguish on what is Gen AI and what is not is given out here. It is not an open, it's not a Gen AI when the output is a number or a class or an example. Example can be, whether, output says that, whether this particular email is a spam email or not. Whether the, but if it's going to be discrete numbers, right? Yes or no. So if it's going to be a discrete number, whether it's going to be a spam email or not, but will this be harmful or not? Yes or no, right? Then it's not a Gen AI. It's a Gen AI if if the output is in a natural language or a text or image or audio and example, some kind of additional example, right? So Gen AI, if it's a Gen AI, then the pattern I've been showing it to you. It can be a natural language, it can be image, it can be audio, it can be new video as well. Yeah. If it's a new content which is based on the existing content, right? Because you'll be you have trained the Gen AI on existing content. Based on that, if you have a new content which is in this category, then it's probably a Gen AI. Of course, as Gen AI is evolving, you have a lot of new things which will be coming out in the future as well. Yeah. So the Gen AI process can take all these things, right? It can take a training code. So you have a lot of time. You have developers using Gen AI. It can be for generating new code. It can be images being generated. It can be new text being generated, right? So similarly, you have training, new code coming in. You have your text coming in. You have your labeled, any of this thing, labeled data coming in, images or text coming in, right? You also have unlabeled, unstructured data coming in, right? So all those things will come into foundation model. Then this foundation model can generate new content. Yeah, the new content can be, can again be text or a code or images, videos, or it can also be decisions as well, remove this part. We'll be talking about how this is a decision making in our risk and compliance examples. Okay. So having learned this, let's go into a progression of GenAI, right? So how did AI and GenAI come into being, and how did it progress from the traditional programming days, right? I just give you a small summary out here. We had traditional programming being done by folks who will use hard code stuff into the code, which we'll talk about. For example, if it's an animal, if they want a hard code animal, or if they want a hard code a plant or something else, which talks about, if it's an animal, let's say 4 legs, then will it have fur? Yes, it will have fur. Will it have ears? Yes, it will have a longer ear, and it will have 2 years. So all those things have to be defined. You have to hard code everything. You have to codify everything. Then you had neural networks coming in the way. Neural networks came, and you could send in sample text. Could send in sample pictures of cats and dogs, sample text, and sample pics. When asked whether this is a cat, it's a dog, it will predict whether this particular patterns are matching or not. So this kind of a neural networks has been used a lot of times in your risk management in terms of pattern matching, right? A lot of time you talk about anomalies. So anomalies are nothing but your pattern matching games, right? So you talk about user has been logging every day between 9 a.m. till 12 a.m., maybe 8 a.m. till 12 a.m., right? So maybe one fine day he does not log in at 9 to 12 a.m., but he maybe logs in at 6 p.m. in the evening. That's an anomaly, right? So you have such pattern matching things coming up from neural networks. But in GenAI, users can generate their own content, right? It can be in terms of reporting. It can also, they can connect with various data sources and get in labeled and unlabeled data, right? They can get your text, they can get your images, video, audios, and and there are a lot of models like PALM, that is PLM, that's Pathways Language Model, or Lambda language model for dialogue applications, which ingest huge data from multiple sources, right? From the internet or intranet, and build foundational language models, which can be again be used. Again, we talked about foundation language models, right? When this foundation language models are built, which can be used simply by asking a query. So once a foundation model is built, you can ask a query, and by typing in something, the type, whatever you're going to type in is called as a prompt, or you can verbally say it as well. If it's, you have multiple ways of doing it. You can type it, you can send a picture, or you can talk about it, and it will catch that prompt, and then you have an output. Output would be something like a pattern matching as well, where it confirms that whether pattern is matching or not. It will also give you the new content, new unique content based on the old content. Yeah. This takes sometimes some time to understand, and maybe these concepts sometimes are different when we're coming in from different domains. Maybe you can go through the slides, and you can always come back to me if at all you have more doubts. But I'm going to make it very simple here. So the slides are very simplified, and try to make sure that you understand as much as possible in your journey for AI in risk and compliance. Okay. So now, when we explained all those things, now let's come up with a detailed definition of GenAI. So we talked about AI/ML, and we talked about different language learning models. We got a lot of examples. Now, what is the detailed definition of GenAI? GenAI is a type of AI that creates new content based on what it has learned from existing contents. We have learned that. That's a part of the definition. The process of learning from existing content is called as training, and results in creation of a specific new model. We call it as, we can new foundation model, statistical model. It can, right? You can come up. It can always come up with a new model. You have a new training, new content. Then you have new model coming in. When given a prompt, the prompt can be verbal, it can be text based, can be image based. GenAI uses the model to predict what is an expected response might be and generates the new content as well. What should be the next response that is being predicted, and the next set of content also is getting generated. Yeah. So eventually it learns, the GenAI learns the underlying structure of the data, and then can generate new samples that are similar to the data it was trained upon. As previously mentioned, generative language model can take what it has learned from the examples it has been shown and create something entirely new based on that information. Large LLMs, we talked about LLMs, right, are one of the types of GenAI, and since generative, and they help generate novel combination of text in the form of naturally sounding language. That's why we talk about this Bard from Google, or Copilot from Microsoft, or ChatGPT from OpenAI, right? So when we talk about all this is perfectly where it fits as one of the LLMs, wherein it's already been trained on huge data set. So that means that whenever you come up with a prompt or queries, you have certain decisions being taken based on the queries, and you have new content being generated on that queries. Okay, this is only indicative AI types, which talk about your image and your text, right? So if I just give a very brief overview, there are a lot of other AI types as well. You have generative image. This is a generative image, and on the other side you can see your generative language model takes text. That's a text one, and you are familiar with that. You have seen multiple language models which are prevalent now, which you are using as well, which takes your text. In image input, the one that takes image can output a text, it can output an image, or it can output a video as well. You have an option of converting your image. It will identify your image in one of the labels, and also generate additional images out of it, or additional text out of it, or additional videos using that images. Yeah. Similarly, you have text, which will give you a text, which will give you an image, which will give you an audio, which will give you decisions as well, right? So this is where it becomes important for us in terms of other applications, right? So this is where you take a lot of decisions in terms of saying that in banking solutions, right, based on certain huge inputs of text on user activities, the banking software will take a decision whether this is a fraudulent activity or not, whether this is a money laundering activity or not, right? So all those things also becomes a part of your GenAI. So that is where you have your output as decisions coming in, right? It's also been used in gaming. Apart from it, also been used in terms of fighting crimes and for law enforcement and all that. I'll just give an example of Google Bard here. So I asked here, what is the meaning of life? So in response to the question, meaning of life, this any of the GenAI, it can be Bard, or it can be your Copilot from Microsoft. It gives you a contextual answer. Then shows it will try to understand what is the question all about. You have to understand. You have to give the maximum context as much as possible. Then it will give you a contextual answer, and then shows what is the highest probability of response, right? So that means that if you go back to the GenAI and let's say in a year or so, and maybe in 6 months, you ask the same question, the response will be different. Okay, so let's come to the applications of GenAI. So we have a lot of things where GenAI is being used, and one of the most useful areas that GenAI is being used here is in terms of risk and compliance. So there are certain applications that have been real-time places where it's been used. So I'll let me quote those things and also talk about different areas where it's already been used now. So there are certain real-world examples which have been used where GenAI is being used. So one of the few things that I could, a couple of things I know it personally. I've been in a couple of I've been a part of one team. I could not name the team for obvious reasons, but of others I've been collecting and I've been studying it, understanding how they're doing it. How GenAI has been used in that context. What are the different use cases which have been used in terms of compliance and all that, right? So the first one that comes through and it's important as well as HSBC has been using AI-powered regulatory monitoring, right? HSBC is implementing AI systems and now GenAI systems for scanning regulation and news sources using NLPs, natural language processing, identifying changes to relevant to their operations. So a lot of times, they have a lot of operations in multiple countries. So they scan sources from multiple countries, multiple places, regulations, changing regulations, who are different actors, who are changing, lobbying it, changing regulations. What is the impact on that, right? This alerts compliance teams proactively. So if something is happening, it's not yet done, something is happening, you get alerts saying that some bill is getting passed or which is getting impacted, where financial institutions or fintech companies are getting impacted, banking industries are getting impacted, right? Allowing them to they're getting a window space to react, right? They're allowing them to adapt before the deadline comes in, right? So this it's been found out by HSBC that by internal team that by implementing AI, they could reduce the time spent on regulatory monitoring and improve compliance accuracy. And this reduction was around 60%, right? This is a huge benefit. If you can see this, I'm giving an example of HSBC, but I'm sure a lot of banking folks will be using this, right? Because it's a huge reduction in terms of regulatory monitoring, because this regulatory monitoring requires a lot of manpower, and compliance team is a very small team for compliance. We have only handful people for compliance, and they're always overworked, right? So we need to make sure that they get adequate time to prepare for the response for any change. I think this is something that's going to give them that time. Yeah. Second is AXA's generative contract review. AXA uses AI to automatically review and analyze insurance contracts, highlighting potential risks and on non-compliance issues. This not only saves them the review time, but also cost as well, because again manpower and review time, experts' time is being saved. But it also identifies the risks earlier, right? Leading to better risk management and fewer claim disputes. Because they already have a lot of data wherein AI can be trained or GenAI can be trained. It can identify these are some of the red flags they need to be watchful for, and that is something that's getting done in Excel. Okay, so BNP Paribas fraud detection and prevention utilizes AI to analyze customer transactions, identify suspicious and patterns in real time. This helps prevent fraudulent activities like money laundering. I've been telling you about there are a lot of routes now for money laundering, and money laundering prevention takes a lot of effort and time, and of course costs a lot, right? So authorized whenever you have AI, which helps you in terms of looking into money laundering or authorized account access, the system's efficiency is constantly improved through this generative AI help, right? Leading to a significant reduction in financial losses from the fraud. So whenever you have AI as another safety net, right? Apart from your experts and you have your due diligence happening in, you have your AI as another safety net. It's going to take your service to a new level altogether. And you also have BlackRock's regulatory reporting automation. BlackRock uses AI to automate the generation of complex regulatory reports. When you have content creation, you have a lot of aspects, customize your content, tune your content, right? By using your GenAI. This not only saves significant time and manpower, but also reduces errors, ensures recording accuracy, right? Mitigating, potential regulatory and fines and reputational damages, right? So I think this is something that is, being used by a lot of organizations across, not only in risk and compliance, but different industries altogether. Yeah. Then you have Santander's, customer KYC process. There are a lot of banking companies now using their KYC using your AI or Gen AI. Santander uses Gen AI to streamline KYC process. The AI automatically extracts whatever is information being inputted by the customer. It will extract that information and verifies that customer information from the various sources. You have different sources from the banking and non-banking places. It verifies it from the banking records, from the government's records, from some different records. It verifies it, speeding up the processes and improving the data accuracy, right? This reduces the onboarding time of customer. You have easier time to onboard for the customer and improves customer experience while ensuring, compliance with anti-money laundering regulations, right? So one of the very useful tool is KYC. I've been seeing a lot of surge in KYC usage for GenAI. Yeah. And the last one, but one of my favorite ones is Deloitte's Reg AI, which has been implemented in US, Deloitte US. This uses GenAI to help clients. You have multiple clients of Deloitte using this particular tool to understand, assess, and comply with complex and evolving regulations, right? So Reg AI can answer the client's queries in natural language, right? Compare and contrast different regulations from different countries, from different geographical locations, and generate a gap analysis and compliance reports. So a lot of such tools are now being done using GenAI, and Deloitte is like one such example. These are some of the real world examples, but there are a lot of such real world examples are there. Let me quickly come to the categories, where GenAI can be used in terms of risk and compliance, right? The first and the primary most category here is in terms of, data generation for training models. Whenever you want to come up with a new tooling for your risk and compliance, right? You need to have data for training this tool. You need to create a synthetic data, right? So you can use GenAI to come up with this kind of data. GenAI can be used to create a synthetic data that closely resembles your real world data. You can't exactly use the real world data, or you can't use the production data. So you have to use this scrubbed data or synthetic data. This synthetic data can be employed to train your new GenAI applications for risk assessment and compliance monitoring without compromising any of the existing sensitive information. Yeah. And we have one more. This is actually one of my favorite, anomaly detection. This has been happening from a long time. Anomaly detection was happening from neural networks time as well, wherein there is pattern matching happening. Now you have GenAI, which is going beyond what is happening before. So you have GenAI coming up with learning patterns of normal behavior activity within a data set. Any deviation of this pattern can be flagged as anomaly, Now, based on that, now using GenAI, you can get more information about that anomaly by getting more contextual information that is structured, unstructured from multiple sources. Because now it can ingest multiple information from multiple sources, huge amount of information, right? So, wherein how did it happen? Did it happen somewhere else? Who is this actor? Who is contributing to this anomaly, right? So, or detecting, what frequency this might happen in the future as well, right? So all those things. This is on top of what we had exactly before as well. So GenAI is, adding to this anomaly detection. Simulation and scenario analysis. GenAI can simulate various scenarios and generate data to assess potential impact on risk and compliance. This allows organizations to proactively identify and address potential risks before they become critical issues, right? It can be in terms of sanctioning a loan, going for mortgage, right? You have a lot of risk factors coming in, right? So that is where you employ your Gen AI to scrub it out to make sure that you identify and address the potential risk immediately without any delay. So you have Gen AI being used in vulnerability testing. There are a lot of whenever you come up with a new banking solutions or a banking software, one of the first things that you do here is in terms of understanding the risk of getting it hacked, right? You do something called vulnerability testing or penetration testing or penetration and vulnerability testing and all that, right? So you use Gen AI or generative models to simulate the potential attacks and systems and processes. This helps in identifying the potential vulnerabilities and improving the robustness of the risk management and total compliance system. Yeah. And this is the most favorite of all. Everyone has been using it, natural language generation for reporting. You can generate any kinds of reports with images, reports with structured data, unstructured data, right? Reports talking about compliance data, risk assessment, your press statements coming in, right? This can save huge amount of time and reduce the likelihood of human error in reporting. Yeah. The fraud detection. So we talked about the fraud detection when we are coming up with any kind of, it can be in terms of mergers and acquisitions, it can be in terms of mortgaging, banking, it can in terms of giving out loan to customers, right? Any of these transactions, understanding that financial transactions, is it matching the any of the flagged violation which has happened long time back, right? Any deviation from that pattern, does it indicate any fraudulent activity? So if it's going to be flagged, if it's a fraudulent activity, it will be flagged for further investigation. So we talked about is one-time risk assessment or compliance management. What about something initially when we do a risk assessment or compliance assessment, during the time of assessment, you don't have any risk or compliance problems. But later on, you might get that risk or compliance problem. So that's the reason we always use Gen AI or AI for continuously monitoring the risk or compliance issues, right? We need to keep on, but this requires a lot of manual effort. So that's the reason we're trying to automate using Gen AI, and a lot of companies have been starting to implement this. This allows organizations to adapt quickly to changing circumstances and identify emerging risks in real time. So this gives a lot of time for the organizations to react. This is extremely important in today's time. So this is something that's super critical in terms of regulatory compliance monitoring. We need to constantly monitor and make sure that we are up to date on regulatory changes and making sure that we comply to the latest guidelines in terms of regulatory compliances, right? So you have Gen AI models being continuously monitoring and ensuring compliance in terms of multiple industries, multiple geographical locations, multiple sectors, right? And identifying any of the compliance issues that are cropping up, coming up with suggesting a solution also for that compliance issues, right? So all this becomes a part of a Gen AI. And behavioral analysis. So whenever you have certain unknown unusual or suspicious thing that's not been noticed before, right? It's a I would say, zero-day attacks or a new Trojan horse, right? So you have such things. Such behavioral analysis can be done using your generative models, which can be on users, employees, systems, right? And any unusual activities can be flagged for further investigation for compliance or with policy and regulations. This has been covered earlier. Okay. So let me quickly come to this word. I would like to maybe quickly do this and then wrap it up for questions. Does it mean that Gen AI is a solution for everything? Not necessary, right? So we have a lot of examples wherein Gen AI might not work as expected, right? Let's see in such use cases where Gen AI has got some real limitations, right? So the knowledge of Gen AI is frozen, right? So if you can see here, this is me. I'm trying to ask something in ChatGPT. Please provide real-time examples or case studies of organizations successfully using Gen AI in risk and compliance. So what is the ChatGPT reply? See, this is my pick there. I've asked it today. ChatGPT says that of my last knowledge update in Jan 2022, there aren't any specific case studies available on organizations using Gen AI in risk and compliance. So that means that the limitation, the primary most limitations of a Gen AI is, how old was the data when this was trained, right? This particular model was trained on the data set of Jan 2022, very old. Then you will not be able to get the information on the latest stuff. You will not be able to get new information at all. So that means what? That means that you need to keep on training the models on the latest and greatest data. If you don't do this, then your Gen AI will be useless, right? This is a prime example. This is my real-time pick that I've put here, right? So if you feel if the data is stale, then your Gen AI will not work at all. You need to make sure that data is not stale and keep on training the model on the latest data. Yeah. Hallucinations. So very interesting topic. Again, this requires a whole discussion, but let me try to give you a very brief summary on what is hallucination. Hallucinations are hallucinations in the context of Gen AI I'm talking about. Hallucinations are words or phrases that are generated by the model that are often nonsensical or grammatically incorrect. Hallucination can be caused by a number of factors, including a model not trained on enough data, or model trained on a noisy data or a dirty data, right? Or model is not given enough context. Hey, if you ask the Gen AI or maybe ChatGPT, where do I go? But you don't have you're not given the context on what are you doing, where you want to go, and what is the destination, right? So it will not give you the right information. Then it's hallucination. Hallucination is what you'll get. Yeah. So model has to be given all this information before it comes in. Of course, again, the model is not trained properly. If it's trained on old data, stale data, noisy data, dirty data, or if the model is not given enough constraints, right? In the prompt, if you're not given the constraints, correct amount of constraints to the Gen AI, then you might get hallucination. There's an example of hallucination. Now I try to do that in ChatGPT. They fixed it actually. This is the hallucination. It was asked maybe maybe a couple of maybe a year back or something. When did the France gift Lithuania the TV tower? So France never gifted anything to Lithuania. So this was a hallucination that was made up by the Gen AI, in this case ChatGPT. But this now been fixed by ChatGPT. I think this is one of the hallucination that was made. You can find out such more hallucination if you keep on using ChatGPT. Yeah, and this is extremely common in all the LLMs. Okay, what are the third limitation? The input and output length is limited, right? So many LLMs can accept a prompt for only few thousand words, right? So for example, ChatGPT text prompts is only 496 characters. Of course, the latest ones, Google Bard and Microsoft Copilot, right? They can, in theory, accept unlimited characters in prompts, but ChatGPT can only accept 4096 characters. That means that if your question goes beyond 4096, it cannot accept it for ChatGPT, right? This is one of the limitations that you have, and the length, that is input and output, right? The can never be unlimited. So it's always limited. So these are some of the limitations that you have in GenAI. And again, this all depends upon the application, right? If you are trying to come up with application which will review the complete documentation, and your documentation contains, let's say, lakhs of words, right? 1,000 or let's say more than millions of words, right? Then it might not work in your GenAI because it might not input, it might not be able to receive that. That's one of the limitations that you have. Okay, and this is not a limitation. I would say this is a suboptimal configuration. If you give a mathematics or a pure structured data for AI, then it will not give you an optimal result. You can give a small table. You give a table to GenAI. Remember this, GenAI primarily is unsupervised learning, right? So if you give this one to GenAI, then it might not give you optimal result. And ask based on this. Maybe you can. This talks about your casualties in the following years, and small, medium tankers, large tankers, and it will asking the GenAI certain questions based on this. It might not give optimal results. For this, you need to use LLM, which is based on supervised learning, right? So that's the reason where you cannot use GenAI, but you can use some other AI. That is supervised learning. We talked about unsupervised and supervised learning, right? This comes in unsupervised learning. So we can go to supervised learning and use the AI more LLM on that, and your structured data can be having an optimum result. Yeah. Bias and toxicity. This is there in a lot of LLMs, and this is not the fault per se of LLM, but it depends upon data that has been trained upon, right? So so some LLMs can output toxic or harmful speech, but they have got now they don't do it because now they put a lot of there are a lot of safety nets now. They have to make sure that it's been done. But primarily this biasness will come from the learning data. It's coming from the learning data, the biasness of the person who's been feeding the data, because he's been creating the synthetic data or learning data. He's been feeding the data to the LLM, and LLM is learning from that. So the biasness or toxicity will come from the data, right? So I give you examples out here. The surgeon walked into the parking lot and took out his car keys, right? Or in another case, it talked about her phone, right? So nurse, they always assumed a female, and the surgeon, it's always assuming a male here, right? It's the biasness coming in. The biasness is again due to the learning data. If you correct the learning data, then this biasness will go off. Conclusion, I would not like to take more time in the conclusion. I would like to say that AI is not a replacement for human judgment. You can do whatever you want, but ultimately there is human judgment is extremely important, and decision making should always be there, right? AI or Gen AI should always be used as a supportive mechanism, but not as an independent decision making mechanism. It's very dangerous if you use AI as an independent decision making mechanism. You've seen a lot of time, driverless cars not being safe enough to drive, or certain time then AI decision might go wrong due to a lot of biasness or a lot of limitations that AI has, right? So always make sure that you should not replace your human judgment with AI. That's how I conclude.